Smithers, are they booing me?
No, they're saying Boo Earns. Boo Earns.
Are you saying boo or boo earns?
All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, we were just joking about this. So I feel like I'm stealing from what we just said offline, but we find new and interesting ways for this team to lose, and this has to be we did that weird one where we won a game this way. And then we lost a game. But first off, how you doing after the weekend? The Giants played tougher against the Saints probably than we thought they would.
Yeah, weird time to be a Giants fan because I kind of get a kick out of looking at the reaction on the game threads. I don't really participate that heavily in there for a couple reasons. One of my sanity, I don't want to get pissed off, and the other is I don't want something to come back and bite me in the ass. The most infamous case being during Super Bowl 42 when what was it? Was it Anak who said this? I don't remember who said why the F is David Tyree in the game. And of course, a few plays later is the play. So, but reading the game review was a really game thread was really interesting live because you had Giants fans cheering for a loss and getting upset when it looked like the Giants might tie or win the game. And it's just such a weird time to be a Giants fan. There were actually Giants fans who I know have been on the site for years, who I know are diehard Giants fans, laughing at the team in the thread going, when something horrible would happen, just be like laughing at what the team's doing. So it's just a tough period to be in. I think we are in this, and I think we're going to talk about it. I think we are kind of back in the 70s now with the airplane and the banner flying overhead because I think we're at that level at this point. I don't know if you feel that way, but I think
Yeah, this is I keep saying, okay, we bottomed out. Well, wait, no, we didn't. I don't know where the bottom is, quite frankly, because I don't think they know. Or if they do know something, it's a weird thing that we talked about before. Like, we knew we were going to stick with this. If X, Y, and Z happened, we know that just didn't work out. But the core were staying together, meaning management, general manager, and then the coach. Because all the things that they've done lately makes you feel almost like you're grandfathered in, like you knew you were coming back. But we'll get to that. It gets so ugly. The plane thing is interesting. My favorite one was when Neighbors said, and I can't, it's really hard to quote him. I think it's like, I ain't paid no plane or something like that. And someone said, oh, he definitely did it. I'm like, if you read the way that's written, there's no way that Neighbors wrote that. That's for sure. But that sure reads like Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm just saying, then there's the Instagram model. Did you see that? Or the OnlyFans model.
That. I posted. Yeah.
I'm like, what levels of like just total dysfunction have we become that's actually something that happens?
I don't know. It's almost like something from a movie at this point. So, and back in the day, I think didn't Lawrence Taylor do some shenanigans like that at times? Not like in the stadium, but
I think he sent like hookers to like
hookers to people. Yeah, I think he did that. So maybe this isn't that far off. This seems a little bit more tame. Another thing I can think of is, again, I don't have a problem with that, but imagine if you were there with like your 10-year-old son or 8-year-old daughter or something, and you're sitting right next to this woman. It'd be like, can we get a different seat? No, the guys wouldn't, but
Well, from the angle of the picture and everything, how freaking far away from the field was she? Like, I mean, who are you distracting? But that what Shane had his binoculars out?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's exactly. As a lot of people said, that's why Shane had his binoculars out. Now we know. So I actually give him, if that, and he didn't do it, but if that's what he was doing, I give him credit. Oh, yeah. He doesn't want to watch his team. He might just watch something else. So, anyways, on that note, yeah,
Oh
it's
gosh.
not it's just a weird dynamic just to see fans. I found myself in the same boat because I'm wired to root for this team. So as they were starting to come back, I was like, oh, we got a chance. This game's not over. And I thought it was over after the lock interception. I thought, well, that was it. I started the game post-game thread, and then we got like, wait, we got the ball back. We have a chance. So I'm rooting, but then I'm seeing people say, well, if they win, we drop to 8th in the draft order. And I'm like, damn. But then at the same time, and this is what I want to talk to you about at some
Yeah.
point too, is this the draft to really be overly concerned about whether you got the first or second pick? Because there doesn't seem to be anybody clear cut that I mean, I guess this would be more interesting if there was somebody up at the top that you were like, we got to get this guy. There's nobody up there that it's like, we got to get this guy, even at quarterback. So part of me says, why are we rooting for losses at this point when there's not even anybody there? I mean, there's not even a non-clear cut to me, non-quarterback up there. So I'm not even really sure what we're rooting for at this point.
Yeah, that's a really because I've said it often that I don't really care where the draft position is per se.
Yeah.
You gotta start winning. Until we got to the point where it was pretty obvious that any win this year might be taken as proof positive. Well, we're still in it. We still got guys. They stayed together, and that might hold the coaching staff together. That I don't feel should be brought back. The coaching staff is just utterly down. They basically sunk this season along with some of the decisions made, just because it's just so clearly obvious that all the things you preach, smart, tough, and dependable, this team is the exact opposite of every one of those things. So that has to fall on the coaching staff. So where you fall in the draft order right now, yeah, there isn't anybody really unless we are going to use that pick to acquire the guy that we want that's already in the league. I think there are a couple options there, but that's just pure speculation. But as far as a player, you would have thought Travis Hunter, right? But I think he's a really good player. I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's a superstar corner, and I don't think he's a superstar wide receiver. I just think he's a really talented college football player at the moment that I think will be a decent NFL player, but at 1 or 2, that's really high.
And I haven't studied him that much, but he doesn't have the physical characteristics
Right.
you look for a player that high. He's not very big. So
Right.
And I think somebody, and what may have been Colin, but somebody made up the good point
He
that
did.
if
He
you
did.
watch Colorado, he's not the guy that grabs your attention. It's still Sanders that grabs your attention. But I think it's kind of clear. And there was a report, but I've had this gut feeling based on what I've seen with the Raiders. I think the Raiders and Sanders want a marriage. I think so. That report that came out a couple days ago or a day ago, and I apologize, somebody posted a thread on it, but I don't remember the name of the person who's involved in it. But they said, for those listening, they said that there's a guy out there said that the Giants are not going to get Sanders. He doesn't want to come here. They really want the team. Sanders really wants to hook up with Pierce with the Raiders, and that seems believable to me. I mean, I don't think Dion would want to come to New York. Or want his son to come here is my guess. And there does seem to be some flirtation with those two there. So we'll have to see if that's true or not. But that brings something dynamic into it too, because if you take him out of the picture, then you're looking at Cam Ward, unless, as we started talking in the website yesterday, is the Penn State quarterback now entering the picture.
Yeah, but that discussion went sideways very quickly with why some people think he's in the picture. And it points to the conversation you and I had the other day. There are some that believe the Giants have a bit of a racial bias for quarterback. Not just physical stature, but the stature piece, as Go Terps and a few others have mentioned, he becomes the prototypical quarterback for the Giants. They want him 6'4", 6'5". They want a certain thing. I don't know if
that part of it. See, that part of it resonates with me. The race thing doesn't resonate.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not.
I think it's the size, arm strength. I think if there is a connection there. Again, we're just speculating. And I
Sure.
should close the loop. I didn't close the loop on the other thing. There's somebody who out there who said that the Giants are interested in Ward and the offensive coordinator
Yes.
down in Miami. I didn't close the loop on that. So Ward still may be in the picture, but I wouldn't discount the Penn State quarterback LR simply because of what you just mentioned, not the race thing, but the size, the arm strength, the physical mold similar to Josh Allen type of thing.
And he's the only one in the draft that is in that size range that you would look to right now, quarterback wise. Everybody else is they're a little different. They're a little smaller, either a little shorter or a little thinner, or just a completely different style of quarterback. He's the one guy that is that mold, so to speak.
And we're in an unfortunate or fortunate, depending on your point of view, period where because there's not anyone who's clear cut number one, on a weekly basis, people are going to start having their new favorite. Even though the college season's winding down, we're going into the playoffs now. But I'm talking about with the combine and everything else. You're going to start seeing. We've talked about this earlier in the summer when the quarterbacks that got drafted in 2024, they moved up and down the board well after the college season ended, and the same thing I would expect is going to happen here. So some people that no one's talking about right now. So say Alar does really well in the playoffs, then his stock's going to go up. But say he looks horrible, his stock's going to go down. So people right now are starting mentioning his name because of how he played recently. So that's kind of where we're in right now. Is people are looking at the quarterbacks going, is this what I really want with the Giants? And then affecting all of this is Daboll going to be here? And one thing that I think we need to talk about still, even though it's old, is are there signs that Daboll is leaving or not? There are people on the site and on social media who keep saying things like, all the signs are there that he's gone, or all the signs are there that he's coming back. If those signs are out there, I've missed them because I don't know what the signs are. I don't know what these people are talking about. I would not bet $100 either way on whether he would be back or not at this point because I don't see these signs that people are talking. I mean, do you see? I mean, do you feel like that there are signs out there? Not your opinion, but do you think you've seen something that strongly suggests to you they're not coming back or they're coming back?
No, the only signs that I can say that I've seen are kind of more towards Shane in his involvement in other areas where he's gone out to some colleges recently and he's bringing his front office staff with him. That would kind of hint a little bit. If you kind of knew behind the scenes, you're not letting him go out and taint the waters of what you might be doing or not doing down the road. They're letting him kind of do that. Daboll, on the other hand, I don't know what you could where you could go with this other than the fact that they haven't fired him. That is really the only thing you can say that, the signs are he's coming back because he hasn't been fired. But other than jumping ahead of possibly who might be available, what are you going to gain at this point now to fire him? You might move, I haven't seen any of those signs. I will say though, from a bigger perspective, if I am looking down on this as I got to make a decision, if he stays, you got to go veteran bridge and then a guy you'll develop. You can't go, we're just going to get a veteran to support the rookie, because you've got to assume that year, if you go rookie and all the other changes, that you're probably going to have a losing season. That would mean three straight losing seasons with the head coach. And what if it's a really bad losing season? Now that's two horrible seasons. Then he's gone. So you've ruined the young guy with a coach you're going to get rid of. So if it's a quarterback you're going to draft to play, which means 1-2, right at the top of the draft, you got to go new coach as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's another argument though for maybe parting ways with him, because do you want to force your hand into doing something that you might not normally want to do just in order to save your own skin?
Right.
So this is getting very complicated. I think what is clear here is a couple things. Stating the obvious, they don't have a quarterback. We've talked about this forever.
Wait, what?
But they don't have a quarterback, and the guys that and this lock's not working. I would go again. I know Devito didn't do anything in his first game, but Lock was really bad this last week, and I don't know. Again, he's not going to be here. DeVito's good chance he's not going to be here, or he'll be a camp arm. But again, there's a chance he could be here. So I don't know why you're wasting time at this point on Locke. I mean, the play. I don't want to spend too much time on the same
please,
game,
but
but the play where he had a wide open field right in front of him, and he cut to the right, short of the first down marker. I'm like, what are you doing? And as Cy had a great line, or maybe it was Bitey Max. Bitey Max and Cy both do. I like putting Bitey Max's stuff up top, and then Cy's obviously got good stuff. But one of them said, and I think it was Cy, said it almost looked like the game plan is just Locke looking for breakdown plays where he could scramble. That seems like the offense right now is just like maybe something will break down and Locke will run for a first down. And that's kind of anything we did in that game with scoring drives or potential scoring drives was Locke running for his life with his feet. Sometimes when he didn't really have to run, but he did it.
Sure.
But Locke was missing guys wide open. He doesn't seem to be. The rumors that we had heard there seemed to be some merit to them. He doesn't seem to prepare very hard. I don't really understand why they're sticking with him. I know DeVito was hurt, so I thought once DeVito started to come back more healthy, I thought they'd put DeVito back in. And so I don't know how you feel about this. Again, it doesn't really matter, but I don't like watching Locke at this.
Well, Locke is really, he's bad. I mean, you can't. We saw it in the preseason game against Detroit. There was just where he would drift to the right for like almost no reason. He would just immediately, any kind of pressure, he would immediately head right. And then he still made like either really bad throws or he would just run out of bounds or throw it out of bounds. And he threw the really bad. I think if I remember, he had one pick and one almost pick in preseason. And you go, that's preseason. Everything we saw in that game, you still see it today in the games. He was really bad. I mean, he had like 3 drops maybe, which is part of that 0 for 9 or 0 for 10 that he started with. And one of the passes was actually he actually made one good pass. And Cy didn't really bring it out as much. And I was kind of a little disappointed because to me, that was 100% on Slayton. Slayton ran a really shitty route. Like he ran himself out of like to the sideline and a ball was perfectly thrown down the field. He could have had it, but then he had to dive back in. But other than that, his passes were being batted down. They were just being missed really badly. And I'm like,
we've got some breaking news, John. We thought, and it's significant. Ooh. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it. This is why we did this.
Okay, so just so listeners out there understand, we were going to do this at noon. John said we should probably wait until Daboll speaks because something might happen. And my response was, well, let's do it at 12:30 when he speaks, and if something's breaking, we can discuss it. So Drew Lock's in a boot right now, and DeVito's going to start, it looks like.
Oh, well, there we go.
There we go.
Tim Boyle will be the backup.
So this is kind of cool, like reacting to things. Let me just see real quick while you're talking. Do you want to address that while I see if there's anything?
No, I think so. Here we go. All right. So anyway, Drew Lock, thank you. Take your boot. You're getting the boot. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
And now Tommy DeVito and Timmy Boyle just re-signed will now be the backup.
Why do I have a strong feeling we're going to see Tim Boyle before the season's over out there? Why do I have this horrible feeling?
Because we are playing Baltimore, and they have a lot to play for. We are going to wheel out probably another combination at offensive line. There's a good possibility.
Yeah, Runyon's not working. He's probably not going to be playing.
That looked kind of bad. In fact, if we plan on him being here next year, I kind of be like, just shut it down. Just shut it down. They say lower leg, but I mean, you watch his knee kind of cave too. I'm like, we can't screw around. We paid that guy a lot of money.
Yeah.
JMS might not play at center. I mean, you can't. The Giants in their history with neck injuries, you could put him back out there this week and we lose him forever. And that may or may not be a good or bad thing. I don't know at this point. So Van Roten might be starting at center. Kubas probably should be starting at guard. So you got your wish with Kubas. He got to play a third of the snaps. So you got. I don't like the dud thing that Cy gave him. He doesn't deserve a dud just because he threw the guy. I mean, listen, first off, it was questionable either way. The guy jumped on his neck, for God's sakes. He did dump him. But for a guy who just came off, I watched him a lot. he immediately disengages if he's got a guy that's kind of moving away and he looks to help the tackle. He moved pretty well, and you know what we've lacked? This team has been okay. Pardon the midday kind of thing. This team has been a bunch of pussies for a long time. And I want a Richie Cyber on the offensive line, and that guy
Right.
he brings a nasty lunch pail. I've got to earn it every down kind of mentality. I like that from our offensive line. The offensive line too often is treated very passively when they need to be extremely aggressive. You need an aggressive offense. They have to be tone setters. And I think Kubis could be a guy. Let him develop, let him play. But yeah, he got in and that was
Yeah, and just other injury news is those Runyon's not working today, unlikely to face Baltimore, could be longer, which probably means he could be headed to IR because they just picked, as you mentioned before we got on, they just picked up a corner off the Arizona practice squad. They got to make a roster move, and so somebody else could be headed to IR here. But you speculated it could be even Tay Banks, because of he's been hurt too.
Yeah,
but it looks
loading up on
like
the corners.
here we go, and Neal's hurt again too. So Neal's not working today, but Neal's been hurt since he's been back. He's been playing hurt again, but that's part of his problem. Is even when he does play, he can't stay healthy. So, and it looks like Newbin's not working and Nacho's not working. So I do want to say this before we get to, Cy brought this up, and you and I were lamenting this would be the case, but it actually ended up being pretty good. Remember when we were talking about the game, I said it'd be nice to see some of the young guys show some pride and play like the game mattered. Well, our defensive linemen that we brought up from the practice squad and the one guy that was already on the roster all played their butts off. Again, granted, it was the Saints. It wasn't a great rushing team, but they held them to 93 yards and 33 carries, and they did that. Now Baltimore's going to be a different story. They're going to probably put up 300 yards on us, but at least somebody showed up. They held the other team to 14 points. You should win when you hold the other team to 14 points. You should win the game. So I thought the defense actually performed admirably. Let's put it that way. I won't say they were great, but they performed admirably out there.
Can you imagine real quick? The Giants, they average 15 points per game, 15.1, 15.3, something like that per game. And you get a game at home where you hold the other team to 14 and you still lose because we average 10.1 points per game at home. This team is pathetic. Yeah, the one thing I'll say, and I said this in the other video, people put too much value on things that happen in a very lost season and need to just set that aside. In this particular game, it worked out, but the Saints aren't very good. The Saints are bad. They have like nobody at wide receiver. We could think of it this way. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is their best receiver right now. This is a guy that's been dropped by multiple teams because he can't catch the goddamn ball. So the fact that we were blitzing to stop the run and we were playing, I'm happy to see these young guys do it. But if anybody thinks, hey, we've got depth for next year, ignore anything about that happens right now for next year. It does not matter. I am glad to see it. I think Chapman needs to play because we got to see if you've got anything with him, especially if you went to a traditional four-man line. Then there's more opportunity for him to come in as a pass rushing defensive tackle. But yeah, that they played over, really over their heads. I think, and the guy
Garcia played all right. The Durden guy played all right. I mean, some of these guys, it's hard to even remember their names at this point. But look, this is what was talking about when we had other shows where I said there were really undermanned Giants teams in the past that showed up at least it was a decent game. And the defense, for what they had, both in the secondary and on the defensive line, played above what I expected from them. So hats off to them. We'll see what they can do against Baltimore. Baltimore's going to be a disaster though, because as you said, they're coming off a loss. They're coming off a bye. And well,
keep in mind, and Jackson, he's got to have an issue with the Giants. Were the one team that he had lost to on the NFC side. Yeah,
I was just bringing that up. The last time he was in the Meadowlands, it was a bad experience for him, and I'm sure he remembers that. So, Julian Love had that pick late in the game and then Kayvon Thibodeau had one of his few Kayvon Thibodeau moments where he sealed the game. That was one of the few great games of the recent years. Again, occasionally they'll do something like that, but those are there's a couple things I want to talk to you about. I wanted your opinions on that I keep saying, am I crazy in thinking that anybody who's talking that there's deliberate tanking going on here is nuts? Because I don't think the Giants are deliberately tanking at all. I just think they're awful. I don't get the vibe that the Giants are intentionally losing anything. But
I don't
but I
no,
don't see it.
I don't know how you would. Like we're injury riddled. Like if they were still throwing Thomas out at tackle and Luminor was at right tackle, the whole offensive line was intact. We had our tight ends were playing, we still had Jones, and this was happening, then I would say, okay, that's a little weird that we can't seem to accomplish anything. This team is not good, and it's injury riddled at this point. You're playing the quarterbacks that we've now realized shouldn't even have been on a roster ultimately, but the guy at the top wasn't that great until we got rid of him. There's no way they're tanking intentionally. I mean, Daboll can't afford to. Even if they told him don't win, you can't tell your players that. The only way you could intentionally tank was, let's say they were down by 7. They score a touchdown and they decide, you know what, we're going to go for 2.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah,
that would be potentially intentionally tanking. There's nothing I see here. They scratch, they claw. They're not good, and they're just trying to win. Besides, you're not going to purposely tank on Frank Gifford bobblehead day. I mean,
like
come
for
on.
instance, why would Drew Lock want to look bad when he knows he's going to hit free agency again next year? There's no reason for him right now to intentionally Drew Lock personally. There's no
Right,
motivation
right.
for him at all. Same with Tommy DeVito when the one game he played in where he's going to play. He must be all fits. He's coming back against Baltimore.
Oh dear God.
Um,
Jesus.
so there was that thing. I do want to talk. I know I'm all over the place, but I have
No,
so
go
many
for it.
thoughts going through my head. But
wing it.
we should talk about and give credit to. Did we ever find out who did do the playing? We didn't find the news. I know when it was going on, there were tons of messages out on social media from reporters saying, whoever was behind this, please
Reach out. Yeah.
DM me, because they obviously wanted to do a story. I haven't seen any stories on that. Have you? I mean, have you? Or
No, I haven't seen anything about anybody taking responsibility for that. It's weird too, because it says, please, Mr. Mara, fix this dumpster fire. Now, dumpster fire is a term we use on BBI all the time.
All right.
Do we have any really anybody on BBI might have we would have heard about it. No, they haven't said
I've used the dumpster fire picture quite a few times already this year instead of the Hindenburg photo. So I thought, matter of fact, when I put it up again, when I put it up recently, I thought, Jesus, I already used this. So it's running out of disaster pictures to use too. So yeah, but anyways, what was your reaction to that? I thought that was cool. I thought
I'm glad it happened. I mean, I just
it's sad, but it's cool.
It's interesting, right? There are a number of people on BBI, for those who don't know, bigblueinteractive.com. There are a number of people who actively believe Mara is the reason a lot of this is happening, that he involves himself in everything, so it can't be somebody of that ilk. The message would have been different. Instead, this is somebody who believes that the Giants just need, they believe in ownership and need new management. They need a new coach, and they put that. The timing of it is interesting. It's against the Saints on Frank Gifford bobblehead day in late December. You could have picked the game with Baltimore where there'd be more attention, but you picked this game for some reason. And maybe it's just because, somebody is so fed up. I like it. It has a different weight than in the 70s, though. That 70s one really hit home more because there was a lot of dysfunction within the Giants organization at that time. They really, ownership wasn't talking to each other. There was different people involved, and the NFL ultimately had to step in and be like, look, let us help you out a little bit.
Which was a really strange thing. The NFL basically had to butt into a family business and mediate it because it had got, like you said, it had gotten so bad they weren't even speaking to each other.
So this one could have been like, if this was let's just put it this, let's just have fun. If this was a BBIer, if this was somebody in BBI that was like, I'm going to do it, I would expect the message would have said, Mr. Tisch, please. And because that's what we always believe is when Tisch steps in, then Mara does something. I just don't buy. I'm not sure who did it. I doubt it was somebody within the team. Like, I doubt it was a player.
No,
But
I don't think so. That would be. Of course,
But I
it's
know
crazy that one of the Giants players had that woman in the stands. So, yeah, who
that
knows?
one also read that someone goes, "That's clearly Kayvon Thibodeau. Look at the way
Somebody
he
said
writes."
that, and then somebody said because the initials were TD, they said it was DeVito. So, and then they said that was.
Yeah,
So who knows? Who knows? It's just interesting week that
it's
how good
pathetic.
my wife said to me, "This is how bad this team is." We were coming back after the game. We were driving and she said to me, do you think Mara's doing this intentionally, losing intentionally? And I said, why would he do that? What motivation would he have to do that? And she said, do you think he might be like betting against his own team? He's got money riding on this. And I said, no. I said, no. But that shows you where people's minds are going. Again, she doesn't really watch this team, but she's so from a layperson's point of view, she's saying, how can a team be this bad for this long when they keep switching coaches? And of course, our answer was because they keep switching coaches, but nothing keeps her point of view is nothing's changing. They stink every year now. Maybe they're trying to be this bad. And again, this is her thinking, how can some organization be this incompetent this long? That's how, again, as an outsider, she's looking in going, something doesn't run. And again, I'm not saying that she was right. I'm just saying it shows you that people who aren't even Giants fans per se or diehards are looking at the team right now and going, wow, this is really a mess. There's something really else going on here, because how can they be this bad this long without getting any better? And they seem to be getting worse. And that was her perspective.
Yeah, you know what's really weird? I truly believe in the world of conspiracy, if you want to think of it that way, they think everything is connected, right? Everything is connected into this. I kind of like to think of this as more. You ever hear the thing of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? Like, if you go like, okay, I'm beginning to feel like that's where we are here, and it's not necessarily as obvious as you might think. But if you just go back a few years, we make certain decisions. So we decide, let's go 2018. We decide to go running back. We got a GM. We bring him in. This guy thinks he knows everything, and everything is tied to the past. His belief was very past driven. Running game, all this bullshit. Touched by the hand of God. We go and get this guy. We don't go quarterback. We don't go, a different position. We don't go offensive line. We go running back, and we think we're going to just grab that nostalgia, and we get him, and he does pretty well, so it becomes confirmation bias. Oh, look how great he is. We just got to get some other players. Then he gets hurt. All the stuff starts falling apart. We then go and we get that quarterback the following year. Now we got a quarterback and a running back.
And let me just interrupt one quick second. Remember, they got Barkley too because they thought they misjudged Eli.
Right. Then we still got a guy. We still got our guy.
Right.
So now you get the quarterback. We immediately push Eli out of the way 2 games into the season. Boom, here comes Jones. And he plays well in that Tampa Bay game for a rookie. And then he's establishing stats and whatever, but Barkley was injured. Now we think, okay, we got to fix the offensive line. We got to do some other things. We got to help him out. But we get a new coach because, we went 2 years with this coach and that didn't work. And we go a different coach. Now we dip into the Patriot thing, and now we've got almost a different mindset. And we take a 6-10, was it 6-10, 6-10-1, whatever it was that we had in 2020 as proof positive that we have turned around, because we almost made the playoffs. But we almost made the playoffs because the NFC East was such a joke. And we were literally mad that Philadelphia laid down to Washington, and that's why we didn't get in. That's how pathetic now when you look back on it. So now we make decisions based on that. But yet we had not arrived. The quarterback didn't get better, and he had some injuries. Now you start to fall off. In 21, we completely fall off the table. Now we're making decisions again. But the one thing you've always said, right, of all those things, what have we not done? We've never we've never pulled a full stop and just said, This has got to go. We keep trying to take guys, and this is where I have a problem with the thought that Dexter Lawrence is untouchable and Thomas is untouchable and all this stuff. We keep taking guys who have been part of a losing system. I don't care how good they are. They've been part of a losing system, and we keep thinking we'll
And
just
culture.
build. Yeah, and we'll build around that and we'll go. The problem is that you can't fill all the holes while you're paying. That's why our salary cap is so screwed up. We keep paying some guys big money while we're a losing team. So then you have to get free agents. Now the cap, you and I talked about this the last show. Our cap is still, we're better right now because we cut Jones. But that is a gaping hole that has to be filled. There's also other holes. So that space that we have is going to go away fast.
And I hope our listeners don't keep going on saying, God damn it, John and Eric keep talking and thinking through the same things. We've heard this before, but I think this is the critical focal point on trying to figure out what's going on. So we have a lot of people on Big Blue Interactive saying, why is this happening? What is going on? Who can we learn from? How can we stop this? And when Schoen and Daboll came in 2022, the very first thing they did, and I thought, oh, thank God, we finally got somebody who knows what they're doing, was say, we got to cut $40 million from the cap. I don't care how we do it. We're gonna get rid of good players, even like James Bradbury, but we're gonna cut, and we're gonna get our fiscal house in order, and we're going to build this team up. So I thought, thank God, this guy gets it. But what did they do then the following year? They took that savings and they gave it to Daniel Jones. It's the guy that they didn't give the 5th-year option to, and the guy that they had their hands on for a full year. And this is where my problem is right now, and I can't get past this. I know other people agree with me. So I don't want to keep Schoen and, I guess in a way, Daboll, but I can't get past how horrifically bad their decisions were in the 2023 offseason.
Right.
And this gets back to what you were just talking about. They didn't, so it looked like they knew, and then something changed. Some people are going to say Mara put a gun to their head. I don't know. I don't know what, if they did or if he didn't, but that stopped the rebuild. They doubled down, tripled down on Jones and Barkley. And now then that went into 2024 with Barkley leaving and now having his MVP season. Jones, they seem to put all their eggs in one basket, and he caught him, which no one out there is really surprised from the fan base. How many of us out there thought he'd be gone or benched by this point? A lot of people did, but their decision was, you know what, if anything goes wrong, we're going to bring in Drew Lock. And obviously, look how that's worked out. So they've so botched the big picture things that it sort of, to me, overwhelms everything else. And this gets back to what you were just saying about the rebuilding thing. They started it off, they stopped it, and now it's morphed into this bigger mess right now. And that's where I am right now. So I'm thinking, do we really want to have these guys making the decisions on the next draft? That both of them. That's kind of like, these guys have made mistake after mistake, big mistakes lately, and do they deserve another swing at the bat? I'm a little nervous about that.
I'm 50% there. Daboll needs to go. I'm 100% behind the fact that he needs to go. I have not seen anything from him that inspires me to be like, this is the guy. The 22 season of the positivity has gone away, because now when you go back and you look at it with a more objective eye, same as like doing a draft, we do it 3 years later and to say, how did that draft really work out? Not initially, 3 years later. So when I look back, what do I see? I see a team that played over its head a little bit in the first half of the season, got some very good breaks on turnovers that you can't always count on. But even in the Baltimore game, we were just talking about the Baltimore game.
You're talking about 2022.
So 2022, if you go back to that game, Yes, we got the interception for Julian Love. They also had a drop touchdown. I believe it was a drop, or there was a penalty that brought a touchdown back. They ultimately had to kick a field goal for Baltimore. We had an interception that got turned over because of an illegal contact elsewhere. But Jones threw an interception in the end zone that would have killed any chance of us coming back. There was nothing about that game that day that said we were really on par with them. We got very lucky in that game, and we were just and our defense played better and stood out towards the end. They made some really bad. Go back and look at the highlights of that game if you can. Baltimore made some really stupid decisions, and there was some really just a really bad penalty on. I think it was on a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1 that then they ultimately had to punt. It's just a lot of things happened that ultimately allowed us to win. I believe 24-20. So if you
I
look,
forgot about that punt thing. You're right about that penalty. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So if you look at that, there was a lot of things that worked in our favor early on. As the season drew on, it did not go that way. We got blown out really by Detroit, and then we lose Wandell in the same game, and our defense gets really racked, but our offense can't do anything. We play the Houston game, we do win, but that game was way tougher and way closer than it should have been. We got a really lucky touchdown pass to Slayton out to the side where Jones is just kind of chucking it, and the defender misses Slayton as he breaks a tackle and he's able to run free. But that's the game that Barkley carries the ball a ton, and then he was never the same again the rest of that
35
season.
carries or something in that game.
So everything went downhill from there, and every choice, though, seems to be on the mindset that the first half of 22 is really kind of where we're at. We just got to get ourselves back to that. And you take out the fact that a lot of the people that were on that beginning part of 22 weren't even on the team towards the end of 22 and definitely weren't on the team on 23. Our whole wide receiving core was a bunch of Jags.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but you kept the quarterback who never really took off. You went against your gut instinct where you, like you said, you took the 5th year out of the equation. We're going to make him earn it. But then you gave him this ginormous contract, which I still to this day believe was just so you could franchise Barkley. You knew that Barkley was not going to take the deal that you were giving him because Shane doesn't believe in a running back getting paid that much. And he doubled down on it in his argument with Mara in Hard Knocks. But we just look really bad now coming back because like you said in the last episode, every single thing that we said can't happen or this is going to look bad has happened. And it's made them look really bad.
And Gary from the website, took issue with what we were saying about you couldn't have parted ways with Jones and or Barkley after 2022. And I understand where he's coming from. And again, PR wise, it would have been difficult. But again, PR wise, it would have been difficult too to make some of the financial decisions that they made in 2022 when they let some players go. And I know this is a different level. My problem with this and my response to Gary was we all saw what they had to do with the offense in order to make Daniel perform adequately in 2022. They basically had to do all this RPO fake, narrow the field and have him throw to one side of the field and use his feet. And defenses that weren't disciplined enough to watch the backside got burned on that. And there were like 2 or 3 teams we played that were just terribly undisciplined.
Right.
And Jones would run for 25-yard gains, and there were big plays. And Minnesota's defense was a train wreck too, and they fell for it as well too. And my argument with Gary is this, and others who think the same way, was you had this team, this general manager and this coaching staff had their hands on Daniel Jones for 1 full year. They knew what he could and couldn't do. Why would you spend $160 million on that guy? Now, some people say, and you've argued and others have argued, it really was a 2-year deal. Yes, but it wasn't a deal that they should have done. They should have franchised him. They should have franchised him, and they should have let Barkley go. And again, me saying that is not hindsight, because I was arguing even during the 2022 season they should have marketed it. They should have been trading him. I said the same thing in 2023. They should have been doing it. You would have kept him out of Philadelphia's hands. You would have gotten a draft pick for him, and again, you'd be in the same place that you are now in terms of Barkley's not on this team. So it was a mistake. And I understand where Gary's coming from. And yes, it would have had a bad short-term look for this franchise, but the alternative is to do what we did. And what we did now is we're a 2-11 team vying for the number 1 pick in the draft, who may have to fire their coach again. And so I don't see. Yeah, I think with hindsight, it even looks worse. Now, I do want to bring this up to you because this question that we got from David from the website, he's emailed me, and it's to you, and it talks specifically about what you were just talking about with Daboll, and he wanted so let me read this to you. He said, "Hey, John, if you have time on the next episode to discuss with Eric, my dad keeps talking about the Giants in 1983 season when Parcells won 3 games, and making some sort of analogy that if we move on with Daboll, we might be firing our next Parcells. Was there any signs in 1983 that Parcells was going to have a future success, even with all the losing? I'm too young to have a perspective on the 80s teams. Curious to know what the fan base and you and John thought about Parcells before he had major success." So
Okay.
So I brought that up now because you're talking about Daboll's future,
Sure.
and I thought that was a good place to drop this in.
Yeah, and you and I are, we're product of the 80s, so we absolutely. So I'll start. It's a good question, but they're not really it's not really a good analogy between the two of them because the situations are different. Parcells was with the Giants already as the defensive coordinator under Ray Perkins. Ray Perkins leaves, during the 82 season, it was already announced that he was going to leave at the end of the year, that he was going to take over for Bear Bryant at Alabama. So now the Giants decide to take the defensive coordinator and move him up. But that Giants team had a lot of issues when Parcells took over. He had a superstar linebacker and a few other really good, another Hall of Fame linebacker in Harry Carson, starting to head towards the backside of his career, an older guy in George Martin, but they had a lot of issues with a lot of players. There was drug issues. There's a bunch of other stuff that was going on that team.
Problems on that team, yeah.
They also had a ton of injuries. Parcells made a huge, what I would say is a major difference between him and Daboll when they took over. Parcells went away from the guy who probably should have been the quarterback. Remember, Sims got hurt in 82. He tore his knee up in the preseason, so he didn't play in those 9 games. But he comes into 83, and somehow Scott Bruner beats him out because I think Parcells wanted to put his stamp. I've never really heard him say it specifically, but I think he wanted to put his stamp, this is my team versus Perkins' team. So he makes Bruner a guy who I think he thought maybe would make less mistakes because Sims was a turnover machine up until that point. He threw a lot of interceptions, a lot of fumbles, very Jones-like in his career, at least to that point. And he had been injured a lot too. That was a big problem. And then that's failed kind of badly. Very early in the year, they make a move to yank Bruner in the middle of the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Sims comes in and he's rallying the team. They're starting to play better. And then Sims throws and his thumb gets absolutely destroyed on the helmet of an Eagle player. He's done for the year. That whole season from there just went in tank. The Giants played a Monday night game against the Cardinals, and a lot of people remember the fact that this was a really shitty game and it ended up being a tie, I believe 20-20. But what a lot of people don't know, LT played middle linebacker in that game. The Giants were so injured, they moved LT to middle linebacker because they had guys like Hedden and Hunt who could play the outside. They needed it, and LT moved to the middle. That's how bad that team was. But that
was a horrific football game.
Oh my God, it was so bad on a Monday night game.
That was a 2020 tie with all the missed field goals.
So that team, that season to me was really, he came in and ultimately the difference that I would say now, really the big difference is that was his first year. He shed what he wanted to, and he took over that team to be his team, win or lose, succeed or fail. It was going to be Parcells' team going forward, 84 moving forward. The other way around is Daboll comes in, they win kinda, and it's gone downhill since. And that's the problem that I have is, again, I keep pointing this out. They started 6-2. I know some people keep pointing out 7-2, but they were 6-2. So technically the halfway point of the season, I guess now it would have been in the old days. That's the halfway point of the season. Since that time, they went 3-5-1, 6-11, and here we are, 2-11 at this point?
Yeah.
It's trending down so badly, you can't possibly say, what is it about Daboll? This has been his team all along. Parcells took over an existing team that he was already a part of. So there was a built-in culture that he took over, that he cleaned out after the first year. Daboll brought his culture in with him right off. All his coaches, everybody was new to the Giants that he wanted to bring in. Since that time, they've gotten worse.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anything, and I want to hear you. I can't imagine anything that says the two of these are even remotely alike.
My answer would be a regurgitation of everything you just said. So I'm not going to add too much more because David, I will say what John just said was spot on, word for word. I mean, so the evolution of this is the only thing, if you weren't aware of the Giants or weren't too young at that time, the only thing that you needed to know was that Parcells' first year was a disaster. The Giants came very close to firing him, but as John just mentioned, there's no comparison in this sense because they decided to give Parcells one more year, and he immediately had success and took off. Whereas Daboll came in, had success, and as John said, it's just gone down. It's gone downhill, and it's gotten noticeably worse. And the one thing that people have to keep in mind that didn't grow up during that period is the Giants got rapidly better. I mean, they were a bad team forever. Parcells comes in, they only win 3 games. The next year, they make the playoffs. They're 9-7. They make the playoffs. Then the following year, they're in the playoffs again, and then the next year they're in the Super Bowl. I mean, it was like, and then a few years later they're in the Super Bowl again, and then Parcells is gone. So there's no comparison whatsoever with this. And I've talked about this a little bit before, or I've alluded to this on the podcast. Is the one thing that's bothering me with Daboll right now is I don't see any fight in him. I don't see any. Parcells was a very gruff, combative person. He used to fight with the press all the time. He was very wore his emotions on his sleeve. I right now Daboll looks to me like a beaten man to me. He looks very defeated to me, and like Daniel Jones looked like a defeated quarterback to me. Phil Simms was the last guy you would. One thing about Phil Simms I love more than anything else was his emotions. He was an emotional guy, and there was a clip this week that somebody showed of him and Ronnie Lott battling after that defeat with the 49ers in Christ, what was it? Was that 89 or 9? It was.
I believe that was
game.
90. That was
the 90
game
where they lost 7-3, right? Yeah. Yep. And he got in the face of one of the toughest, scariest defenders in the NFL history, Ronnie Lott, and wouldn't back down. And that kind of fight is what I want. The losing bothers me, but what bothers me even more is losing with a smile. It's just these guys.
It's apathetic.
Yeah, and I just it's like you see guys, and again I understand it. It's a different time period, but. I don't think losing bothers these guys as much as it used to. And these guys get paid way more than those guys did. And it's too bad. The one thing I feel bad for the younger fans is they didn't get a chance to see football back in the day. Now everyone's going to say, "Oh, here you go. Get off my grass, old man." The game was different, and it was better. The game was better. Tackling was better. Blocking was better. It was just, and a lot of it was because teams could practice, and they can't practice now, and teams stayed together a long time. There wasn't free agency, and so you grew up. And so anyways, long story short is John nailed it with his answer. And the big thing is Daboll's had 3 years here, and it's getting worse. That's it in the summary.
And Parcells was the defensive coordinator before he became the head coach.
Right.
At no point in time did he take over the defense and run it. Belichick was the defensive coordinator under Parcells.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really good staff that he kept together. We had our defensive line coach. I'm forgetting his name.
Lamar Leachman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You had a really solid staff that he kept together, but he was the coach across the team. Daboll is supposed to be an offensive guru, comes in as the head coach, but he dabbled in the offense constantly, even with his own offense coordinator. Then he removed the offense coordinator, and now he's the guy calling all the plays and running things. He couldn't possibly have made this more about him, and it's showing that this isn't going well. His coaches, the wink thing, I don't like Wink Martindale's attitude and stuff about that whole situation. But I also don't think that Daboll didn't play a role in that. Daboll's attitude and the way sometimes some players get away with doing really crappy stuff and other players don't is weird. He's got sort of a frat boy mentality with the locker room that I don't really like. This idea of like we're going to go back and look at film. It's ridiculous. It screams of Ben McAdoo. We got to look at we're going to look at the tape. I don't want to hear. Why don't you just tell us how you're going to you just take care of the Duke better? That'll leave. If you start saying shit like that or weird stuff that Joe Judge said at the end, that would be the cherry on top. But overall, Daboll's done nothing to inspire me to think he can be a head coach.
Well, what do you think? Is he coming back or no?
I would say no. If I say no, I say no.
It's funny how people see this differently because if you go on and look at the commentary, it's people saying, "Oh, you guys are nuts if you don't think he's coming back," or there are other people saying he's gone. What are you talking about? It's so interesting that not everyone, a lot of people, a lot of people are convinced that they know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I have a hard time seeing a 2-win team bringing back a head coach that is also coming off a losing season, and everything that they've seemed to have planned, which was advertised across the nation on Hard Knocks, backfired on them.
Yeah,
I just have a hard time seeing that. Oh, we got to talk this, and I don't want to make the show too long, but now we've got growing noise that Belichick's going to be out of the picture because of North Carolina.
That's interesting. That is a very interesting.
That's a weird situation. So my many comments on other episodes saying I have a hard time believing that Mara's not looking at him. That right now my prediction there doesn't look good.
Well, I'll say this. Don't forget, Bill Belichick was coach of the New York Jets for one day before he stepped down.
Yeah.
This very well could be a ploy. I shared in our
I saw
post that one of the things he's been a little surprised at the lack of interest. I don't think that should be a shock. You've mentioned it more than once. His age is a big deal. I mean,
it's a huge deal.
We're not talking he's 65. He's in his 70s.
Yeah.
Especially in a rebuild. There was also the perception that he wants to be with an established team, with an established quarterback, and a chance to win.
And he wants his son to have a path.
So I think this is a ploy. He might end up doing it, but I'm wondering if from a negotiation standpoint, if he's like, listen, I'm not kind of getting the pull I want, but if people want to, really want to get me, I'm going to make it seem like I'm not going to be available here. You're going to have to get this done. The only team I could see that, there's two teams that I could see that really working with. Well, okay, let me backtrack. 3 teams. The first team I thought he might actually go to was Jacksonville. Because they've got a new stadium coming up in the near future. They've got an established quarterback. They need to win, and they need a personality. And that would bring everything to that area. And I think, especially with the international piece, because they always play in London, they've got those games. I thought he would go there. The other one immediately was, of course, the Giants because of the history and everything else. But they're not going to let him have control of the organization. That's obvious. The mayors are not going to do that because they don't believe in one central person having control, and I don't believe in it either. Then there's Dallas, which I thought was off the table, but then they lost Monday night. They lost Monday night, and Jones goes in the locker room, bitches out John Fossil. By the way, please fire him, and we can hire him next week as our special teams coach.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The coach.
Yeah, go ahead. They didn't even call a block. They just cut a block. And you got a guy you just brought off the practice squad, tried to get the ball. Give me a break. That was a bad play.
Wasn't that guy with us too? Wasn't that guy in
God, his name sounded really familiar. So
yeah, I think he was in training camp. I was going to look that up and I forgot. Anyway, sorry.
So I could see McCarthy all of a sudden going because Jones is getting a little pissed off about some things when it looked like McCarthy was safe. There, I could see Belichick going in because you're in a ready-made situation if you fix a couple things. They got a quarterback, they got a receiver, they got a superstar defender, all the things that a Belichick could turn around quickly. So, yeah, that's a weird one there. I just think that if the Giants are going to fire Daboll, you've got to go you got to go in one of two directions. And I'm leaning towards the first. The first is you got to get a guy who was a head coach before and not a Pat Shermer kind of was a head coach.
You're
He's
thinking
got a,
Vrabel.
I don't see how you can't offer him whatever he wants to come on board. You've got some people in the front office with a connection. You've got the money and you've got an established organization that, by the way, Belichick used to coach for, and that Vrabel and Belichick aren't exactly best buddies. Vrabel has a few issues with Belichick. So to come into a place that he used to be and really turn it around, it's got to be appealing. I know people keep saying the Giants aren't, but it is the Giants, it's New York, and it's popular.
Well, you got not only the front office connection with Cowden, you've got a couple of, I think there are 3 coaches on the team besides Shane Bowen that have been with him too. So he may even retain some of the coaches. I think there's an assistant.
God, I don't want Bowen though. I don't want Bowen.
But he may want him.
Would you want Bowen on here though? Would you?
I don't have a good vibe with him, but if Bowen was basically his lackey in Tennessee, he just may want his lackey here in New York.
That's true.
Too.
That's true.
So I don't know.
That's
I'm
true.
just saying, I don't know. I don't like our defense. I hate our defense right now. But again, if you bring Vrabel in, Vrabel has been tied with Bowen for a long time now. So
true.
I'm just thinking this through.
So what about your answer? Is Daboll coming back?
I can't. If he comes back, I'm going to be blue. not Giants blue. And not Giants blue. I hope it's like what David said, and he would have a renaissance like Parcells did, but I don't see it. I just see more of the same, and I've said it 2 episodes in a row. It reeks of 1996 with Dan Reeves if he comes back. That we're postponing the inevitable, and then what I'm worried about is now we've drafted a quarterback that the next head coach might not really want to work with. And then that's my thing about we've never really just torn the Band-Aid off completely. And that's kind of why I'm leaning towards, if there's any inkling that they think Shane's a problem, then just don't postpone it. Just start over for once and just do it the right way, because I don't want to be here 5 years from now having the same goddamn conversation we're having right now. If we could go back in time, I think we couldn't believe what we're talking about today. In 2019, if we could go back in time and show what the state of the Giants was in 2024, we'd be like, oh my God, we're still where we were. Nothing's changed. And I don't want to be 5 years from now, because I'll be in my 60s then.
Yeah, no shit.
What the hell is going on?
No shit. Yeah, that's not good.
I just don't want to. I don't think he's coming back, but I would not bet he's going to be fired. But how can you justify bringing him back when, like you said, he took over the play calling and it's gotten worse? And the play calling was a disaster the offense was a disaster last year. It's worse now, and remember the offseason was the entire offseason, other than the Brian Burns move, the entire offseason was dedicated to making this offense better. And none of it worked. And that's kind of where I am with Shane right now too, and I know other people on BBI feel the same way that I do right now, is how can you divorce the two when this is why I have a problem. They both sat in that room and said, we're okay with bringing back the same quarterback room. They said that on national television. They said, we're okay with the same quarterback room. Yep. And that's when they thought they'd have Tyrod Taylor come back. And then they were like, yeah, well, Tyrod's not coming back. And well, we'll bring in Drew Lock then. And it's like, great. Now, I will say this. Before we got on, I had to go back and look at the free agents available at quarterback and what they got paid this offseason, and it wasn't good. So Tyrod was actually, I think, the 3rd highest paid quarterback, believe it or not. But if you look at the quarterbacks that went in free agency, it's not good. The best guy for the bang for the buck was Sam Darnold in terms of value. Now, if they had gotten Sam Darnold and he played anywhere near what he's playing like right now, they would have looked great. But would Sam Darnold be playing as well as he is here under this coaching staff with this offensive line?
Yeah, I would say no. I'd say it's a pretty easy no.
Yeah.
Like nothing has really developed. Everything that we accomplished really was accomplished again in those first 8 games of 22.
They're living off that. They're living off that.
Well, what I mean is like
and the Minnesota playoff game. They're
everything.
Minnesota.
Well, yeah, that's true too. But you know what? The other thing there is, and I'm as guilty as anybody else about putting too much stock into that. If you go back and look during that season, the Indianapolis Colts with Jeff Saturday as their head coach took like a 30, I believe it was 33-0 lead at Minnesota. They ultimately lost, by the way. Minnesota came back and beat them.
Right.
But that's how bad that defense was, that a shitty team coached by Jeff Saturday, who came off his couch with never having coached before, they somehow put up 33 points on the Vikings at Minnesota.
Right. But we can get into this game was close, that game was close, what could have been kind of thing. But what you said really is what it comes down to. They're living off the reputation of the first 8 games of 2022, and they're living off the playoff win. If you're going to do scales, that's like that. It's bad now because everything else completely outweighs that now. Because that's distant past now. 3 years is a long time in the NFL, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse. And
I mean, they live off to not just the results of that, but I mean the specific plays, the style that they were able to come up with. That's all they've been able to live on. They've never come up with anything since. Once people, as you said, once they figured out whether you want to call it RPO or just the potential of a run or pass with Barkley Jones, once they figured that out, the Giants have had no answer. We haven't been able to do anything else. Now, partly because the guy behind the center was just not capable, which you heard, and we talked about it, and it was something I was thinking about, that they were looking at a veteran quarterback during the season before the trade deadline. I believe the name has already been out there, but it doesn't matter. They were looking at a guy, and it's an established, really good quarterback. That to me tells me where you were record-wise, you knew that if you put a different quarterback back there, that this offense would do better. And I think they're still kind of holding their hat on that. The problem that I have is you can't bring, as I said earlier, and we'll wrap that part of it up, you can't bring Daboll back if you go rookie draft and I'm starting the rookie, because you've got a 2-year downward trend, very steeply downward trend with this head coach. You've got a losing thing, and you're all of a sudden going to coach. If you lose even a little bit, that coach is out of here, which means lack of a better word, you've retarded the growth of the guy you're drafting, because now you're going to replace that coach. You're going to bring everybody new in, so his development's all screwed up.
That's where I'm at. That's why I'm like, why are we? This is what they've done for the last decade. They've half-assed this, and that's why I'm like getting on the same page. And again, I think when this is all said and done, they're going to look back on 2023, the decisions they made in March of 2023, and say, boy, we shot ourselves in the foot. We did this to ourselves. And if they don't come away with that, then they're fooling themselves, because I think we would be willing to Giants fans, most of them aren't dummies. And they would have accepted, I think, if they saw that the things were being made in order. Because I saw this back repeatedly when they've changed coaches. Fans were willing to say, we understand things aren't going to be great because everything's new, but let's just make the right decisions. And so they would have understood, I think, again, switch at quarterback, maybe continuing to cut salary cap just to clear the decks. And I saw comments from lots of people saying, and that's why a lot of people were very high on Schoen at the beginning, because he was a breath of fresh air, and he said, "This is crazy that we're up against the cap like this. We're gonna clear this out. And we're gonna get our house back in order." And then, like I said, and we're repeating ourselves now, they undermined themselves the following year. So on that note, I think one other thing. I've been meaning to bring this up. I told you offline. I just want everyone else to see this, show you how mad people are. Sometimes fans don't understand that the website is not the Giants. So I have been getting emails from fans asking me to sell the team. So they think they're reaching out to John Merrill and they email me at Big Blue Interactive. And I just got one 2 weeks ago. It said, for the love of God, sell the team. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing.
Listen,
I
if you
responded to them. I said, you better tell the Giants this because I'm not them. So,
well, if you do manage to sell, no, don't forget me. That's
yes.
Now, speaking of that, real quick, did you see that the Eagles are selling a small? Now that you're allowed to do that, they're selling a small minority ownership into their team. Their team has been valued at $8.3 billion. And I believe they're selling like an 8 or 10% stake in the team to two family interests that are going to be buying in. So that's going to become more and more the norm now that the NFL is allowed.
Based on the Soto contract, that won't only buy you a few
shit.
baseball players. So
That's crazy.
That is crazy. I'm sorry, BBI. I know you guys love the Mets and the Yankees and all this, but no professional athlete on the planet is worth $750 million. I'm sorry, that's insane. That is insane.
And baseball contracts are way different. Like at 15 years, I'm like, oh my God, how old's he gonna be?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what if he gets injured 4 years into it? Like, what's the guarantee? Like, is it all guaranteed? I mean, in the NFL, there's outs unless you're Deshaun Watson and then you've locked that sucker down. But other than that, they got outs for this after a year or two. But baseball, Jesus Christ, the Mets are still paying Bobby Bonilla.
Yeah, but just remember, you just said the Eagles are worth $8 billion, and this guy got $750 million. A baseball player in a sport that's kind of losing anyway.
It's kind of anyway.
All right,
so with that, yeah. So we'll probably do a short one later to preview the upcoming game, the slaughter that is to come. And then next week we've got some stuff on tap. I think we'll hold off.
I think the Ravens game and the Eagles game that are left are going to be critically important to the decision of whether these guys come back. That's my gut instinct. I think there's a potential if the Eagles really want to humiliate the Giants in front of their home fans with Saquon Barkley and the fans going, "Thank you, Giants," and chanting that. This could hit a whole no level of embarrassment and humiliation for the Giants. And the Ravens against the Giants on Sunday. Whoa. I mean, that could be like that. This could be, we could be talking about catastrophic embarrassment here for both Schoen and Daboll. So I think they're really important games for both guys. So I think they're important games in that sense.
So we'll see. But yeah, so like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll have another shorter video. And then we got some fun stuff coming up. And, unfortunately, we've been talking about it. We're looking forward to the draft in the off season. And once again, here we are. So
yeah, and we're gonna have Cy on next week. Cy's coming.
There, good. Okay, so so you will have that, and that's that'll be fun. That'll be fun to talk about a bunch of stuff with him, and because we have different opinions and stuff, and I like his take, and this is different than Collins, and so yeah, it'll be good to see where we're at. So
well, again, I want to spend, and then last thing, I want to spend on our next show. Let's talk about quarterbacks too before Cy comes on. So you and I will talk quarterbacks, and then we'll have Cy come on. And then we'll let him do all the talking because I know that's what people want to hear when he's on. So
all right, so quarterbacks it is. And maybe we'll take some questions about that and we can answer those too. So all right, well, appreciate it once again, and we'll be back again with another Inside BBI with John and Eric later this week. Have a good one.